Hello, my friends. Wait a minute, I forgot to put on my microphone. Hang on a minute while I get that done. This will be noisy. Pretend you don't hear this noise. Hello, my friends. Okay, I'm going to attempt to do something here that may be over my head, but it's worth it to me to try it. Steel guitar players talk a lot about tunings, and I'm one of them. I'm as guilty as anyone, and possibly more guilty than most. Steel guitars are tuned almost always in some kind of an open chord, so that if you just strum all the strings, you get a pleasant musical sound. Since you're going to lay this bar across all the strings at once, it's not the only way to do it, but it is widely believed to be the most practical way. Once again, your mileage may vary, other people may disagree. I'm doing the best I can here to make not too controversial statements, but I have to say something or I can just talk mush and this can be a bowl of oatmeal. So, most steel guitars are tuned to an open chord. And there are a lot of common tunings. I use two of them. This guitar here is tuned to a type of open D that is known as Vestapol tuning. And it's a tuning that's real common in slide guitar, the kind you hold against your chest and not lay on your lap. Although there are other lap steel players besides myself who use it. This one over here, can you see it? Yes. Which you guys know is my go-to guitar. It's my #1 favorite guitar that I play. Only instrument that I own that competes with this for my heart is my harps. This guitar is tuned in what's called C6 tuning. And plus it's a 7-string guitar, so it's a C6 plus tuning. And I'm going to try to explain all that before this is over. Okay? Now, this is a D, and this is a C. So you could say, okay, big deal. The only difference is that they're tuned in different keys. But the keys are not relevant, particularly. You can tune a guitar in any open key, and you can play it in any key you choose. All you have to do is lay the bar on a different fret. There's a D chord. There's an E chord. If I want to play this guitar in E, I just choose that as my tonic, and I use this. See, what is E? E is that'd be correct. This and that make the big 3, 1, 4, and 5 in E. This make the big 3, 1, 4, and 5 in D. So the key I'm in is not relevant. The important thing about the different tunings that are used in steel guitars is the internal harmonies. Yes, they're both chords, but they're not interchangeable chords. Let me demonstrate a point. There's a D. This guitar is tuned in an open C. I lay my bar across the 2nd fret, that's my D fret. Here's a D. Doesn't sound anything like that one. And not just because this one goes up into higher notes. The internal harmonies are different. This one has these. Notes in it. Wait a minute, I've got some reverb on it. This will be better with no reverb. Okay, I just turned off the reverb. I'm not going to restart to get rid of that. This is a D. But this D has these notes in it, and I'm going to ignore my plus. I personally tune my C6 guitar. I built this as a 7-string guitar because of my personal taste in music and what I wanted to be able to do with it. And I personally tune it differently than a normal or standard C6, which is a 6-string tuning. It's a 7-string guitar. I'm going to not play that 7th string for part of this conversation today, so that you see you're comparing a Vestapol Open D 6-string tuning to a C6 6-string tuning played in a D key. Okay, so here we go. There's your D chord. One more time. There's your D chord. Here's your 6 notes. Here's your 6 notes. Whoops, that's a C. Very, very different, because the internal harmonies. This chord, I'm going to go back to my Vestapol, because it's a very simple, rudimentary chord, and I'm going to stand on it for a while. Okay, if you don't know the meanings of the numbers that I'm using, which are scale degree numbers, I'm not going to go there today. I would ask you to go back into either my Facebook Music Theory for Beginners page or Jeff McFadden Music on YouTube, and find my Music Theory for Beginners course. In the early videos of that course, I explain the major scale and scale degrees. Major scale basically has 7 unique tones plus 1, and the scale degrees are a number associated with each of those, 1 for the first one and 2 for the second one, and so on. I said I wasn't going to do that, but I did. Okay, this guitar, this D chord is a D note, which is a 1. It's an A note, which is a 5. It's another D, which is a 1. It's an F sharp, which is a 3. It's yet another A, which is a 5. And it's yet another D, which is a 1. So this has 3 root tones, 1s, and 3 octaves, D, D, D. It has 2 5s, and it only has 1/3 or 3. The way our ears perceive chords, we perceive the information that we receive from the note, which is the 3rd of the scale, the 3 note in the chord. Now I'm not talking 1, 4, 5 here, which is chord numbers. I'm talking 1, 3, 5, which is the 3 scale degree numbers in your basic major chord. Okay? Your ear perceives the information that you receive from the 3 note to tell you whether that's a major or a minor chord. In Western idiom, and when I say Western, I don't mean country and Western Hank Williams, I mean the United States, much of Europe, lots of Africa, that kind of West, as opposed to like Asia, the East. In Western idiom, and it's not universal in the West, like the Celts see this differently than most of the rest of us, which is cool. There is no right or wrong. This is just how we perceive music. Music is totally and entirely subjective. So, but yet we're hardwired to appreciate it. So it's both built into us, and our understanding of it is still overlaid on top of us by our spirits. Okay? So, but we hear that 3rd. That's the note that tells us if something is major or minor. And if something has no 3rd, that's 3 notes, but it's not a chord by my definition. Here's 4 notes. Still not a chord. Here's 5 notes. Still not a chord. Here's 5 notes. Still not a chord. That is a 1/5 interval. With no 3rd in it, your ear can't tell you whether that's a major chord or a minor chord. It's considered to be ambiguous. Ambiguous means not defined. Okay? And major chords sound really resolved. We speak of resolution in music. What we mean is we have reached the finish point. When we speak of what key a song is in, the song is not in the key it starts in. It's not in the key named after the note it starts on. It is in the key named after the note it finishes on. It resolves itself. It reaches resolution. And what resolution means is that most of music, I did this the other day. For a big long spoken word piece, I used mostly those notes. And resolution is the feeling you get when you say that song could end there and it would be just fine. Now you don't have to end there, you can pick it up and go on again. But if I was to go and stop, you would not be satisfied by that piece of music. That piece of music didn't end. It just stopped. It's like you're driving someplace on the interstate and somebody up there runs into one another, and now the interstate just stops. You're not where you want to be. You're stuck on the highway. Yeah, you're stopped. Big deal. It's not doing you any good. Resolution is a feeling you get when something ends. There's resolution. That's the end of one time through in that progression. And that's a D, because this guitar is tuned in D and I chose to use an open chord for my resolution and not some fretted chord. Now, ambiguity and resolution are opposite. Blues music is often ambiguous. There's lots and lots of firsts and fifths in blues music. Anytime you have a chord that doesn't have, anytime you have a group of notes which are presented in chord-like fashion, which don't have a third in them, you can't tell whether that's a major or a minor structured sound, chord, or group of notes. You can't tell. The third is where you get that. If the third is 2 whole steps above the first, that's a major interval and you're listening to a major chord. If the third is only 1 1/2 whole steps above the first, that's a minor interval and you're hearing a minor chord. I can't do that with this guitar very easily. I could go there's a D minor chord. What I've done is I have fretted that third up almost a whole octave, but not quite. There would be my whole octave. And there would be a major chord, more or less. I'm a little off pitch here. That third's what tells you whether that's a major chord or a minor chord. This guitar only has 1/3 in it. It has 3 firsts, 2 fifths, and 1/3. So any chord I play, it is a major chord. For all that, because it's in a Vestapol tuning, there's your resolution. We went back to our root. Because it's in a Vestapol tuning, the third is understated. It's way overpowered by firsts and fifths. 1/3, 2 fifths, 3 firsts. It's way overpowered. So it's understated. So you get a feeling that, yeah, this is kind of a major chord, but you know, That's not the be-all and end-all of everything it thinks about itself, everything it wants to be in life. If your third is equally balanced against your other strings, you get a much more major sound. It sounds like something you ought to sing in church, or it sounds like something that they ought to use in a happy country song. And that is more common in the C6 tuning. And I'm going to demonstrate that here real quick. Hang on. Still having trouble with that leg, so I have a hard time managing my volume pedal. And if I didn't manage my volume pedal every time I unplugged one of these guitars, you'd hear it crash like the world had tried to end and failed. So bear with me. I ask your patience. Okay, now we have two weird things in the C6 tuning. One is we have 1, 3, 5, and then again we have 1, 3. So we only have 1/5. We have 2 firsts and 2 thirds. So anytime you hear a 1, 3, that sounds like it's pretty much going to be a major chord sound, even though there's no 5th there to make it a full, genuine, real major chord. That's got the 5th. It's an inverted chord, and I'll talk about those on another lesson on another day. So anything you do with the C6 tuning, it's not because of the presence and absence of the 6th, which is another wild chord note that I'm going to get into real heavily here in just the briefest moment. But it's because your number of thirds is a heavier percentage of the total sound that comes to your ears. And so it sounds more major. And it sounds more resolved. It doesn't sound as much like this guitar does with its kind of semi-bluesy natural nature. If I play a chord here, and what I'm going to do, I've been playing in D's, and if you'll excuse me, rather than staying in D's, I'm going to play a C chord here because I want to mute my 6th note so that I can just get a 5-string C6 tuning chord. See how much more major chord sound that is? How much more that sounds like something you'd expect to sing in a church hymn, or you'd expect to sing in John Prine's song, Grandpa Was a Carpenter, which I happen to love to play on this particular guitar. That's because it has 1, 3, 5, 1, 3. Only 1/5. Part of the reason that I built this particular guitar like I did is because that low note's another 5th. I like 5th heavy harmonies. I like to have the power to make my 1/5 overwhelm my 3rd. And so that's why I put that 5th on there. That's the sole reason. It has another handy thing, which is if I'm going to play, okay, say on either of these two guitars, my low note open is a tonic in the key it's tuned in. This one's tuned in D, my low string's a D string. This one's tuned in E, my low string's it's tuned in C, and my low string's a C string. So my 6th string, my normally low string, is a tonic. But I like to be able to go. Be able to take a melody that I'm working and run down to my resolution point and run below it, and especially if I'm going to double back on that melody and play it again. I have another verse. I'm not out of verses yet, right? So I'm going to play another verse. I like to be able to go say I like to. I want to make it clear that in my opinion, and I can argue this opinion in a court of law if I need to. I can defend this opinion against people who disagree with it because it's pretty strong and well-founded. Music is subjective. If you like it, you like it, and if you don't like it, you don't like it, and there is no best. I just saw another question on Facebook today. Who's the best steel guitar player in the world? There is no such person. My favorite steel guitar player is not the best steel guitar player in the world. He is my favorite steel guitar player because I am an individual, and on a subjective basis, I like his music the best. And you might be surprised to know that he's not the same guy every day, 7 days of the week. It really actually depends on the mood I'm in. I am not the best steel guitar player in the world. I don't care who you are or what you like. Somebody else does what I do and does it better. That's fine. I can live with that. I'm the best steel guitar player I can possibly be, and I'm satisfied with that for today. Tomorrow I would like to be better. We'll see how that works out. Okay, but back to the point of these tunings. I put this 7th string in here so I can have 2 5ths and a 1st to make that chord. But in the normal C6, there's your major chord, and it is 1 3 5, boys and girls. It's 1 3 5. If you mute your 6 and strum your other 5 strings, it's 1 3 5 1 3. Now that chord couldn't get any more major if you stuck an oak leaf on its collar, or whatever kind of leaf it is that majors in the United States Army wear. I can't remember. That's a major chord. That's as major as you can get. Now, what they did with the C6, though, the guy that thought up C6 was absolutely a genius. I bow down to his memory. I've heard it was Jerry Bird. I'm not certain about that. Whoever it was, I bow down to his memory. He was a genius. On this guitar, I cannot play any minor chords on my red guitar here, which is tuned in Vestapol Open D. I have 1 5 1 3 5 1, and there's nothing I can do to get a flatted 3rd there. I'm stuck with major chords. Now, what I can do if I want to play, like if I'm playing with Shade Tree, and Sandy's calling out minor chords, this has got an A minor in it. I can get away with that on this guitar because I just don't pick the 3rd. I take my A chord position, which is right there, and I pick 1 5 1 5 1, and I dodge the 3. Since there's no 3, it's neither a major chord nor a minor chord. Sandy, meanwhile, over here on her 12th string, which is large enough to carry enough water to feed an army lunch, she plays that minor chord whole wango, and that 12 string rings out that minor 3rd. And boys and girls, you know there's a minor chord going on here. And I can play 1 5 1s and 5s behind her, and I don't screw up her sound. We sound like a band playing a minor chord. You can get away with that stuff on this. But if you're a solo act, you cannot actually generate a minor chord on one of those without doing, actually you can. If you're like Mary Flower, one of the most brilliant guitar players that has ever lived, she knows how to make Vestapol give her minor chords. And I've even got her lesson where she teaches, but my little feeble brain hasn't grasped it yet, but I will. But she still can't play just any minor chord she chooses. She can get some minors out of this thing with her skill and her knowledge. I can't get any. But in this, the deal about a 6th, you've heard me talk on other lessons a whole lot about relative minors. Here's a major chord. That's a D major chord. And if you take and you pick a chord whose tonic, or the root note of that chord, is the 6th note out of the D scale, and then you pick the 1 and 3 out of the D scale with it, 6 1 3 of the D scale, that gives you the relative minor to your D major chord. And in the case of the D, that's a B chord. That's 6 1 3 of the D major scale. But what it gives me is it gives me 1, the flatted 3rd, and the 5th of the B major scale, which is the relative minor scale. B minor scale is the relative minor scale to the D major scale. This guy figured this out, and that's why I am just in awe of his intelligence and his underlying comprehension of how music works. I can't say that. I would like to get there someday. I'm not there yet. But on a C6 tuned instrument then, any place you lay your bar and you play your major strings, which is your 4, 5, and 6, I think backwards and slow. You know about the slow. I just did a big deal about that the other day. On guitars, they count from the skinny string. So the skinny string is 1, and the next to the skinniest is 2, and the next to the skinniest is 3, and the next to 4, 5, and 6, and in my case 7. Unfortunately, when you sit here and play one of them, and I don't care whether you're playing a Spanish guitar and you got it up like this, or you're playing a lap steel and you got it down like this, when you look at them, you're presented them, quote, upside down, unquote. I'm looking at the fattest string here. That's the first thing my thumb finds. Confuses me, you know. Do you count the way everybody else counts so that you can communicate with other humans, or do you just let your little feeble brain do the best it can? And I go back and forth. Anyway, the point being that when I learned how to tune this thing, I asked somebody, I'm going to put you on hold here. I'll come back in just a minute. Okay, I apologize for this interruption. The way this is coming out, I'm going to have to make this as 2 videos and glue them together right at this point, because something came up that I had to take care of. But I've got so much time invested in the first half that I don't want to start over. So I hope you'll bear with me that I may repeat myself. I may skip some important things, although I hope not. I was talking about the pardon me, about the major chord on your 4, 5, and 6 strings, and the minor chord on your 1, 2, and 3 strings, which is the relative minor to the major at that same fret, on any fret on a C6 guitar. And what that means is that, okay, given that every fret is a half step from the fret before, this open chord is a C6 chord. There's a C sharp, and there's a D, and there's a D sharper, an E flat, and there's an E, and you can go right on up. This chromatic instrument, every single fret, all guitars, except those that are fretted like dulcimers, all conventionally fretted guitars are chromatic instruments. So you can play this thing in any key. You can play this other one, this red one here, in any key. It's tuned in D. I can play it in any key. This one's tuned in C. I can play it in any key. I've been playing it in C quite a bit this last 3 or 4 days, and usually I don't do that. Usually, because the people I play with don't play in C much, usually I play this in G, D, and A, and one guy who annoys me no end with his insistence on this, always wants to play in B flat. We play everything in B flat. Of course, then he says, well, I capo up 3 frets and I'm playing G, and so then he sits there and he's calling out chords. Okay, play a C. Okay, that's a C. No, you moron, you're in B flat. Let's see. What you're playing there is a 4 chord, so that's B flat, C, D, E flat. Yeah, I need an E flat chord there, and you're yelling C, and I need an E flat. but you're not allowed to shoot them. There's so much paperwork you have to do, and so you just play along. And when he says C, I just make a face and think 4 chord. Okay, that's an E flat. An F is a 5 chord. If you got to play a B flat, this guy's voice is so touchy, that he can't move one single stinking half a step lower. Okay, A is only half a step from B flat. Half the women in Ray County sing in A. If I couldn't play an A, I couldn't go to the town jams. I couldn't play at the bar. No, he can't play an A. He's got to play in B flat. Sorry about the rant. That's a side point. The point is that this is a completely chromatic instrument. This is a completely chromatic instrument. You can play in any key, regardless of the name of the key it's tuned in. Some guys like to use open strings, and okay, so then if you use an open string, you have to, like if I'm going to use open strings on this, I have to play in D, because that's what the open strings are. Or I have to play in A. It depends. You can do it. There's even workarounds for that. That's a side point. The point is that these two tunings have such different internal harmonies that they don't sound good on the same songs. And that's why I use 2 guitars, because I want one of them to sound good on Grandpa Was a Carpenter by John Prine, and that's this one. And I want one of them to sound good on Dixie Chicken by Little Feat, and that's this one over here. Because Dixie Chicken does not have that full, wholesome Methodist church on Sunday morning sound to it. And I think Little Feat ever did really had that Methodist church on Sunday morning sound to it. And lots of dirty lyrics too. So it's not to be surprised that different internal harmonies work better with their music. And as you study and learn and become a better musician, you'll find those. And these are only 2 of the possible tunings. I mean, there's a lot of them out there, and guys use a lot of different ones. I'm not skilled enough at my current level in my progress to use a lot of different tunings. This is all that I can wrap my brain around at my current level. Guys use minor tunings, where your open chord is a minor chord. And they get some beautiful sounds. I don't know if you've ever heard on YouTube, there's a guy named Larry Hutchinson or something who plays Little Wing, and sits on his front porch and plays Little Wing on a lap steel, and it is the most incredibly beautiful thing you could ever hear. And he says in his comments that he's got that tuned, I believe, in an E minor. He's got it tuned in a minor open chord anyway. So you use all these different tunings because you want different internal harmonies. You want the whole sound to be different. There's another trick about this C6 tuning, but before I go there, I have to go to something called extended chords. One of the reasons that I insist in my lessons that a chord is 3 notes is because one of the reasons is because it makes it possible for me to talk to you without every single sentence having to have a 1,000-word disclaimer glued on the end of it. But another one is that there's another thing called an extended chord. Okay, a major chord is 3 notes with a major third. And a minor chord is 3 notes with a minor third. But if you add another interval besides 1, 3, and 5 inside your chord, you get what's called an extended chord. And in most cases, that chord is named for the added interval. So this is a G chord, G major, 1, 3, and 5. That'd be a G, A, B, C, D, G, B, and D. 1, 3, and 5. But if I add this, which is my 6th note, then I get an internal harmony. I get a G6 chord. It's a 4-note extended chord. It's extended above 3 with an additional tone out of the G major scale, which the tones don't even have to be out of the major scale. Most, but not all, extended chords take the exact name of the additional tone that's added, like a G6. There's other things called sus4s and other things, and that's all very interesting, and it's not for this lesson. But the trick is there's another extended chord, and if you're a musician already, especially if you play any blues or much country music, if you're already playing guitars, songs on guitars, songs that you learned off the radio or from the guys down at the bar or whatever. You're playing probably a thing you call a 7th chord. And that's the one fudge factor. A 7th chord is not a major chord with the added 7th tone. It is the major chord with the added 7th tone flatted 1/2 step. And the reason for that is so complicated that it's a whole lesson by itself. And I'm not going there right now. That's a whole lesson by itself, and I'll get into it someday. But I can play, okay, besides playing any major chord, G major, and any minor chord, E minor, without doing anything except laying the bar on the fret and picking 3 strings that are side by side with each other. I can also play an E minor 7th on that G fret, okay? And I can play any minor 7th. And that's my top 4 strings. 1, 2, 3, 4. Because the 5th of the major scale, that tone which is the 5th of the major scale, that's a D of my G scale. That tone is the flatted 7th tone of the relative minor scale. So that note's already there, right? And if I play 4 strings, I get my E, which is my tonic of my E minor. I get my, geez, I'll have to think, E, F, G, which is the flatted 3rd of an E major chord, or the 3rd of an E minor chord, and I get a B note, which is the 5th of an E chord, major or minor. But if I add in string number 4, I will get a D note, which is the flatted 7th. The true major 7th of an E chord is D sharp, or E flat, but it's D sharp because E is a sharp chord. But since this note lays out as a D, so I can play a D, I can play an any minor chord 7th on any fret, wherever I need to. There's my A minor 7th, there's my C minor 7th, and my D minor 7th. If I leave that string out, I get the straight minor without the 7th. The 7th is that kind of a semi-dirty, I've been down at the bar drinking hard liquor and now I'm trying to sneak in the back door so the old lady won't catch me coming home snockered. That's that chord. Okay, that's the 7th chord. It's one of those disreputable chords. That's why it's in all this blues music all over the place and a lot of country songs and some rock and roll. If you're going to play the chord that has the actual 7th tone of the scale, that's referred to as a major 7th. All your other extended chords that I can think of right off the top of my head, if you say a number, it is that number out of the major scale. You know, a G6 is a G plus a 6. Now, if you want to play a 7th major, a conventional 7th off a major chord, not a major 7th, but a conventional 7th off a major chord, on a C6 guitar you have a couple of options. You can put a separate string on there and tune it 1 step below your tonic. I used to do that. This G string has, at other times of my life, and if you look at all my videos, you'll see I always lay out in my a description of my pieces. I lay out what tuning I'm using, and I will mention that I'm using an added B flat or an added G to my C6. And that's because of what I'm trying to do with that. But I have to change strings. I can't just do it. It's nothing's that easy. But you can play a 7th on a 6th on a 6th tuning. Okay, 7th is a major 7th is a 6th moved up a half a step. Okay, here's a C6 chord. That's 1, 3, 5, 6. Now, the reason I'm doing a C there is because this particular trick I'm about to do will only work in the open position. If I fret that 6th note up on my 2nd fret. That's a major 7th. That tone there is a major 7th tone. It's the tone immediately before my tonic. Okay, 7 on any scale is a half step below 8 on any major scale. So your major 7th note is there. But the cute thing is that you can raise your 6th just a half a step. There's your basic C 7th chord. And you can't do that with a straight bar. Now you can either use slants. A lot of guys use slants. I'm not skilled enough to do slants very much. I do slants here at home when I'm practicing, but I don't do slants on things I'm recording yet because I'm not skilled enough with them. I mean, I don't mind making a few mistakes, but I don't want to just jump up out of my chair and fall flat on my face. So I don't do slants on the stuff I record yet. I'm not that good. But here's what you can do to play a 7th. Okay, here's a G chord. That's a G major. It's your basic G major, 1, 3, and 5 in G. You can hook your finger behind that 6 and pull it up a half a step. It's really hard on about the first 3 frets because that string doesn't really want to stretch that far when you're clear down here working so close to the nut. You need to be up here in the middle someplace, you know, to really work that trick. Anything below about an E, I can play an E 7th that way pretty good. But you can play a 7th off a minor chord without any funny stuff. It's just 4 strings. Okay, now you can do a lot of that stuff, similar stuff to that, on an open D. It just works different, okay? Because your internal harmonies are different. The whole point of today's lesson is that the difference in your tunings is not that they're tuned in different keys. That is so close to irrelevant as to be not of a concern to me personally. Okay, but here's my 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1. Okay, now 5 is a whole step below 6, is a whole step below 7, is a half step below 8, except I started that on a 1 chord, so I shouldn't have. Okay, there's my D. Okay, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Oh, this is my 3. Pardon me, I'm a little confused here. Let me get down here where I know where I am. There's a D. That's a 1. We got 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, right? So there's a 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? I skipped over my 3rd, my string which contains my 3rd, because it makes this too difficult. But if I want my 7th as in 7th chord 7th, and not my 7th as in 7th scale degree 7th, I can just take my 5th and I can go up 3 frets. So I can play I can play my 7th, my root note 7th, just by fretting one of my 5ths at my 3rd fret. Works the same. If I want to play a minor, like I said, I got to skip that 3rd. Okay, I can go like this. Pretend I'm playing minors. And if my guitar player's playing minors, nothing I'm doing there will clash with what she's doing. We can play that together, and we are making harmonious music. If, however, I go like this, and I pick that third and she's playing minors, that's going to sound sour because I'm going to be playing a note that's a half a step away from her. One thing that you need to avoid at all times and at all costs is playing two notes that are half a step apart unless you have a good reason and you know what you're doing. Okay? Sour notes are part of music. I'm always talking like sour notes are a bad thing. Okay? Sour notes by accident are a bad thing. But music has to have some tension in it. It has to have something interesting. If you just play an endless diet of 1, 4, and 5, it's okay, but it's just boring. There's no tension to it. There's no reason to listen to that. Think of a TV program you like. Okay, you like this TV program. Is everything good all the time? Nobody ever shoots at the good guy? Or gets the good guy's girlfriend tied up in a barn, or bad things never happen? Okay, that's tension. All art needs tension to function. And music is art, and it requires tension. So you need something besides that. So that's what these weird chords like... That's what these weird notes are for. If you want to play two notes that are half a step apart, play them on purpose, have a reason, know that you're creating tension, and after you create that tension, resolve your tension. Use your internal harmonies that are within the tuning you have chosen. You guys know, those of you who know me at all well, that I have a particular love affair with 3-string cigar box guitars. And you probably know, oh crap, I took my shirt off and I left my other slide in that shirt. Well, I'm going to play this 3-stringer lap style for a minute because I don't have my finger slide with me. I can't get out without getting up and screwing up this recording. Okay. This guitar, which is my favorite, hi Chica, you're a good girl, is my favorite of all my cigar box guitars. It's a 3-stringer, and it's tuned D-A-D. That's 1-5-1. It's not because it's in D that it matters. A lot of you guys tune G-D-G, guys and girls. Let me not leave out the women. There's a lot of brilliant, I just was saying earlier that Mary Flowers is one of the great guitar players on this planet. So Cindy Cashdollar. Ladies, I didn't mean to leave you out. A lot of the guys and girls who play these things, who build these things, tune them 1-5-1. Because, once again, if somebody's playing in the majors, okay, I'm in D here. Here's my G. There's my A. Now let's say somebody wants to throw a B minor into a song that they're playing and I'm playing a 3-string guitar. I got no problem with that. I just play a B. Because I got no third in here. I got 1, 5, and 1. My B, this is this thing we all call power chords. Why is it a power chord? Because it's not a major chord, it's not a minor chord. It's not a drunken disorderly chord, and it's not a sober chord. It's not a you're under arrest chord. So we decided we'd call it a power chord because it has so much power you can use it with anything. Okay, think about this for a minute. This lap steel, 1-5-1, 3-5-1. This cigar box guitar, 1-5-1. This is the lower half of that lap steel. Those of you who have watched me play that lap steel have probably noticed that I tend to lean pretty heavy on the lower half of it because I'm doing that same thing. I'm playing that 1-5-1 stuff that I play on my cigar box guitars. It's all a matter of choosing the tuning that you want to play on based on the internal harmonies within your tuning, and the proper tuning is the tuning whose internal harmonies suit the songs you want to play. There is no best, there is no worst. There is only works, suits. If you can get the internal harmonies that make your ear happy on the song you're playing, you're in the right tuning. for me, because the band I play with and the people I hang out with and the joints where I hang out, I need two tunings. I need the major country and western sounding tuning of a C6, which I can play blues on. If I'm only going to take one of these guitars, I'm playing out tomorrow, and I can barely walk still because of this knee surgery. They're coming to get me. They're going to carry my amps. I'm still pretty crippled. I had to get my nurse and therapist's permission to leave the house right now. I'm not leaving the house. I'm not driving. But this is it's an important event in my town. It's an important event for my band. And so I'm going and I'm playing. But I'm not taking this little red guitar because I can't lug that much stuff when I'm crippled. We're just playing a short 1 hour set. We played at the bar. We played for 5 hours. We played 5 and 6 hour sets at the Old Town Tavern in Lexington, Missouri, and we play a lot of different stuff. We play a wide-ranging variety of music, from the country and western of the 40s to the blues of the 20s and 30s to the rock and roll of the 70s and the 80s to things that I make up and things that Sandy makes up, John Prine songs. We play a lot of different stuff. We're not doing that tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm taking my C6 guitar, everything we play. Even if I make it sound a little more major than I would make it sound down at the bar, it'll still be music. It will be acceptable. And it will be something I can do in my current limited condition. But choose your tunings, not because somebody told you they were better, but choose your tunings because the internal harmonies within those tunings suit the songs you want to play, suit the sounds that you want to hear. And if you do that, then you're a musician. Now for me, I want a double neck guitar. I want a C6 tuning and an Open D Vestapol tuning on one guitar so that I don't have to change guitars. I mean, you watch me do this tonight. Imagine you're in a bar with me and I'm doing this all night. I'm changing guitars. So I have this double necker here. This guitar has a C6 neck right here and it has a D neck right here, and the C6 neck is still a 7-string neck, and the D neck is still a 6-string neck. It's got some humbuckers on it, and it's got some single coil pickups on it. All the electronics are in here. It may be difficult for you to see some of that yet. I haven't really actuated it to my satisfaction yet, but it's right here. This is a double neck cigar box lap steel guitar. Mark my words. Friends, I appreciate you coming along with me tonight. I always enjoy these conversations. I really, really hope that I give you something that's of value to you. And I really hope that you enjoy these conversations too. It's a lot of fun for me. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.